Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Wishing you all an enjoyable listening experience. Today, the book I'll be interpreting for you is Risk Savvy, with the subtitle, How to Make Good Decisions. In the modern world, risks are lurking everywhere. From terrorist attacks and financial crises, to the COVID-19 pandemic and volcanic eruptions. Unexpected crises can always happen. Many times, people react out of fear and avoidance, resulting in even worse outcomes. For instance, in the months following the 9/11 attacks, many Americans were reluctant to fly, and chose to drive to their destinations instead. This led to a high frequency of traffic accidents. Statistics show that in the year after September 11th, approximately 1,600 Americans lost their lives in car accidents while avoiding the risk of flying, which was more than 5 times the number of passengers who died in the 9/11 attacks. Furthermore, after the 9/11 attacks, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq resulted in the deaths of thousands of soldiers and civilians, and consumed over $1 trillion. Some believe that the financial strain caused by these conflicts may have contributed to the 2008 financial crisis. So, when facing risks, how can we make wise decisions? The book I'm introducing today explores this very topic. The author of this book, Gerd Gigerenzer, was born in Germany and served as a psychology professor at the University of Chicago in the United States. He is an internationally renowned psychologist and risk expert who has taught courses around the world, educating people on how to correctly perceive and assess risks. His students have included distinguished doctors, bankers, entrepreneurs, and politicians. Gigerenzer believes that making good decisions requires learning statistical knowledge to objectively understand risks. We also need to learn how to use simple heuristics to solve complex problems rather than further complicating them. In this book, Gigerenzer thoroughly discusses different types of risks, common misconceptions about risk probabilities, and strategies for dealing with various risks. The book received many positive reviews upon its publication. Publishers weekly praised it, saying that anyone who doesn't understand mathematics and natural sciences can learn something valuable from this book. Now, I'll break down the book's main content for you in 2 parts. First, the different types of risks. And second, how we should effectively address these risks. Let's start with the first part, discussing the different types of risks. The author categorizes risks into 2 types, known risks and unknown risks. Known risks refer to those for which we can calculate the specific probability of occurrence based on existing factors, usually expressed as percentages. For instance, when providing a weather forecast, meteorologists might say there is a 30% chance of rain tomorrow. This probability is determined by analyzing humidity, temperature, atmospheric conditions, and other factors. Similarly, if someone contracts COVID-19 and the virus doesn't mutate, we can estimate their risk of death based on previous cases, providing an accurate percentage. On the other hand, unknown risks are those where we only know that something might happen, but due to numerous uncertain factors, we cannot calculate a specific probability. Many scientists have predicted that in our closely connected modern society, a global pandemic could occur. However, no one could accurately predict the probability of it happening this year or next. The COVID-19 pandemic was a completely unexpected black swan event. For example, a company might be performing well presently, but in the future, it could face competition from new entrants or lose competitiveness due to changes in industry policies, resulting in a sharp decline in performance. However, nobody can accurately quantify the probability of these risks. These all fall under the category of unknown risks. Risks can evoke unease and fear, leading people to dislike risk and seek certainty. Sometimes, this can prevent us from objectively assessing risks, distorting our perception of reality, and making incorrect decisions. The book discusses 3 adverse consequences of risk aversion. 1. Zero-risk illusion. People mistake some known risks as certainties, believing that they will either definitely happen or definitely not happen. This misconception is more likely to occur when the probability of known risks is small. For example, in medical tests involving advanced technologies such as blood tests, genetic testing, or CT scans, people often assume that the results are infallible. However, this is not the case. Tests for diseases like HIV, cancer screening, or DNA comparisons can still yield incorrect results, even though many perceive them as 100% accurate. For instance, HIV testing is widespread in the United States, conducted on blood donors, new military recruits, and couples before marriage or pregnancy. In the public's perception, HIV testing is viewed as entirely accurate. However, the author points out that even the most accurate HIV tests have a possibility of error. If someone receives a positive result, their actual probability of having HIV is 96%, which is high but not 100%. Lower accuracy rapid tests could result in even more significant errors. In rigorous medical procedures, a person typically undergoes HIV testing 3 times. If all results are positive, a diagnosis is confirmed. If the person's lifestyle doesn't easily expose them to HIV, they should seek further testing at a different facility after a positive result. Unfortunately, this information is rarely communicated to those being tested, and medical consultants and government agencies often exaggerate the accuracy of test results. This misinformation can cause unnecessary panic and stress among those who receive false positive results. For many falsely diagnosed individuals, doubtlessly believing they have HIV, immense pressure ensues. Some lose their jobs, families, and friends. Others opt for suicide or self-destructive behaviors, including engaging in unprotected sexual activities with other HIV-positive individuals. Having a correct understanding of the risks associated with HIV testing could prevent these dire consequences. The second adverse consequence of risk aversion is known as the turkey illusion. This refers to mistaking comforting risks as known risks and believing one can accurately predict the future. The term, turkey illusion, comes from a story about a turkey. A turkey becomes increasingly worried that the farmer will eventually slaughter it for Thanksgiving dinner. However, as time passes, the farmer treats the turkey kindly, feeding it every day. After 100 days of seemingly safe treatment, the turkey concludes that the farmer will continue to feed it in the future. What the turkey doesn't realize is that the next day is Thanksgiving, and the farmer will show up with a butcher's knife. The problem with the turkey's thinking is that it assumes the future can be predicted based on past experiences. However, reality is filled with uncertain factors that cannot be controlled. Predicting the future solely based on past experiences can often lead to incorrect conclusions. In the field of finance, there are many instances of the turkey illusion. Risk assessments in the U.S. real estate market, for example, primarily rely on mathematical models that use historical data. According to these models, the risk in the real estate industry in 2008 appeared minimal. The U.S. Secretary of the Treasury at the time, Henry Paulson, even claimed that the financial institutions were robust, highly efficient, and very flexible. However, within a few months, the subprime mortgage crisis erupted, leading to numerous real estate companies and financial institutions going bankrupt. This crisis eventually escalated into a global financial crisis. David Viniar, the chief financial officer of Goldman Sachs, remarked that this crisis entirely exceeded the predictions of the company's risk models. The author contends that the very concept of how financial firms assess risk is flawed. They believe that relying on past data can eliminate all unknown risks. This notion contradicts reality since the real world is in a constant state of change, filled with uncertainty, and new developments can emerge at any time. Focusing solely on historical data can result in being disconnected from current realities and unable to adapt to present challenges. Many experts tend to predict the future based on past experiences, but their conclusions are frequently contradicted by reality. For example, in the early days of the telephone's invention, some British experts believed that telephones wouldn't be of much use in the UK because the country had an ample number of postal carriers. Similarly, when high-speed trains were first introduced, a London University professor studying steam engines claimed that high-speed trains were unattainable because passengers would suffocate from the speed. In hindsight, these viewpoints seem absurd, and relying on past experiences to predict future risks often proves unreliable. The third adverse consequence of risk aversion is termed defensive decision-making. This occurs when people choose alternatives that are less optimal but offer self-protection against potential risks because they fear the responsibility associated with those risks. For example, the author has a friend who works at a non-profit charitable organization. Since the organization's funding relies on public donations, they need to undergo financial audits by accounting firms to demonstrate the proper use of funds. The charity had two options: hire a local, cost-effective, experienced accounting firm or select a well-known international firm with high fees but less experienced, young accountants. On the surface, the logical choice would be the smaller, more experienced firm. However, the charity ultimately opted for the large firm because if donors discovered that the organization used an unfamiliar small firm for auditing, they might suspect insider dealings. In contrast, choosing a well-known firm would make donors feel more secure. To avoid potential accusations, the charity wasted funds on unnecessary high auditing fees. Defensive decision-making is especially prevalent in the medical field in the United States, where there is a high concentration of lawyers. Lawsuits are common, and many doctors conduct unnecessary tests or treatments out of fear that failing to do so could result in legal action. Physicians often request high-resolution CT scans, invasive procedures, or exploratory surgeries that patients may not need. Doctors believe that if they don't perform these tests or treatments and a patient's condition worsens, they may face legal consequences. Therefore, they err on the side of caution, even if it means patients endure unnecessary discomfort and costs. In Pennsylvania, a study revealed that up to 93% of doctors have taken defensive medical actions to mitigate legal risks. Some doctors insist on high-resolution CT scans for every patient, even when not medically necessary. However, these unnecessary scans not only waste money but also subject patients to radiation doses hundreds of times greater than regular X-rays, posing a higher risk, especially for children. These patients may experience long-term health consequences, including an increased risk of cancer. Additionally, some doctors may insist on invasive tests like biopsies or colonoscopies, which can be uncomfortable and painful, but they do so to shield themselves from potential legal action. This defensive approach benefits doctors but burdens patients with unnecessary costs and suffering. To summarize the first part, risks can be divided into those with calculable probabilities, known risks, and those without calculable probabilities, unknown risks. Aversion to risk and a desire for certainty can lead to the adverse consequences of zero-risk illusion, turkey illusion, and defensive decision-making. How should we correctly address risks, then? In the following second part, we will discuss what to do. I've summarized the methods introduced in the book into 3 key points. The first point is to conduct thorough research, understand the risks associated with a particular issue, and determine the type of risks involved. For instance, the author uses breast cancer screening as an example. In the United States, many healthcare institutions and media outlets encourage women to undergo X-ray mammography for breast cancer screening. Consequently, many women believe breast cancer screening is essential and go for these checks annually. However, what many people don't realize is that breast cancer screening itself carries risks. For instance, it can lead to misdiagnosis, causing patients to undergo further invasive tests to confirm the results. Even if it turns out to be a misdiagnosis, this process can cause significant pain and stress, often resulting in sleep disturbances, affecting normal life and work. Another substantial risk associated with breast cancer screening is the potential for harm outweighing the benefits, leading to defensive medical procedures. Cancer can be divided into 2 types, those that grow rapidly within the body and require prompt treatment, growth cancers, and those that grow extremely slowly, possibly not manifesting symptoms until the patient's death, non-growth cancers. Most screening methods cannot distinguish between these 2 types of cancer. Many doctors, out of a fear of liability, may recommend treatment for patients with non-growth breast cancer, leading to unnecessary surgeries, chemotherapy, early menopause, and cardiovascular damage. Breast cancer screening risks don't stop there. Some women may develop cancer as a result of the X-ray radiation exposure during screening, and many women experience physical discomfort during breast examinations due to compression. These are aspects of information that are often overlooked. The author doesn't oppose breast cancer screening. He believes it should be a woman's choice. However, women should not be misled by one-sided information. They need to understand the risks involved, weigh the pros and cons, and make informed choices. The second point in addressing risks is to correctly understand probabilities. Knowing a specific percentage is not enough to make the right decisions. In the book, the author further divides the probability of known risks into 2 categories, absolute risk and relative risk. Absolute risk refers to the probability of an event occurring, while relative risk refers to how much the probability of an event increases or decreases compared to its base probability. We should focus on absolute risk rather than relative risk. Over the years, there has been a strong fear of oral contraceptives in the UK because media reports occasionally suggest that oral contraceptives may lead to blood clots in the lungs, posing a threat to women's lives. The most famous report was issued by the UK Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, stating that the third-generation oral contraceptives increased the risk of blood clots in women by 100%. This number seemed incredibly alarming, and women across the UK became worried. As a result, some women stopped using oral contraceptives, leading to an increase in unintended pregnancies and abortions. The National Health Service's expenditure on abortions increased by £4 to £6 million. Pharmaceutical companies' stocks also plummeted. However, the 100% here referred to the relative risk compared to previous risks. The actual risk was very low. Several studies have shown that the absolute risk of developing blood clots in women taking second-generation oral contraceptives is 1 in 7,000. If taking third-generation oral contraceptives, the absolute risk increases to 1 in 3,500. From a relative risk perspective, it indeed increased by 100%, but the absolute risk remained very low. If the regulatory agency had stated that the risk of blood clots with third-generation oral contraceptives was 1 in 3,500, it's unlikely anyone would have been concerned about this issue. So when making decisions, we should not be misled by the percentage increase or decrease in relative risk. We should focus on the absolute risk, which is the key factor. To better understand absolute risk, we can express it in a different way. When people talk about the probability of risk, they often use percentages to describe it, which is simple and intuitive. However, what this percentage refers to can be subject to different interpretations, leading to misunderstandings. For example, since 1965, there has been confusion among the U.S. public regarding what precipitation probability means. When a weather forecast says there is a 30% chance of rain tomorrow, some people interpret it as a 30% chance of rain throughout the day, while others believe it means a 30% chance of rain in certain areas. There are even those who think it means 3 meteorologists predict rain, and 7 predict otherwise. The reality is that in 10 days with such forecasts, it is expected to rain on 3 of those days. Misunderstandings related to percentage probabilities are also common in the field of healthcare. The author mentions a friend who is a psychiatrist and often prescribes antidepressant medication to patients with mild depression. He used to tell his patients that there is a 30% to 50% chance of experiencing sexual side effects if they take this medication. Many patients became anxious upon hearing this and were reluctant to take the medication. It was only later that the doctor realized patients were interpreting this probability as a 30% chance of having sexual problems in their own lives after taking the medication. However, what he actually meant was that among those taking the medication, 30% to 50% might experience sexual side effects. This misunderstanding arises because percentage descriptions lack specific context, causing people to misinterpret what the probability pertains to. Fortunately, percentages are not the only way to express probability. The author recommends using the frequency of specific events to convey probabilities. For instance, a doctor could tell a patient that out of 10 people taking this medication, 3 to May 5th experienced sexual problems. This way, patients understand that the probability relates to people and not specifically to their own sexual lives. Some patients who were initially alarmed by the percentage probability became willing to take the medication after this clarification. This approach, using concrete event frequencies instead of abstract percentages, provides a clearer understanding of probability and helps prevent decision-making errors due to misinterpretation. The third point in addressing risks is dealing with unknown risks for which probabilities cannot be calculated. In such cases, we can simplify the thought process and make decisions based on heuristic rules. Heuristic rules are concise principles derived from practice. They can be based on personal experiences or long-standing practices in a particular field. Heuristic rules do not consider many factors, instead, they estimate probabilities based on a few key factors, allowing for quick decision-making. For example, in January 2009, a plane taking off from New York collided with a flock of birds at an altitude of approximately 850 meters, causing both engines to fail. Captain Chesley Sullenberger had to make an immediate decision: try to return to New York's airport, which was at a greater distance and might be unreachable, or perform an emergency landing on the nearby Hudson River, which carried its own risks. There wasn't enough time to analyze the engine's condition comprehensively or to predict future developments. Engine failures at such low altitudes were extremely rare, and there were no precedents to reference. Captain Sullenberger's decision was based on a simple heuristic rule: if a landing point becomes unattainable during flight, it will appear higher on the windscreen. Conversely, if it's attainable, it will appear lower. After observing the changing position of New York's airport on the windscreen, he decided to land on the Hudson River, successfully executing the emergency landing and saving all on board. Heuristic rules are also widely applied in the business world. In today's rapidly changing markets filled with uncertainty, corporate executives need to make decisions across various domains quickly. Relying solely on data analysis can be time-consuming and may overlook positional risks. Senior managers, with their years of experience and broad expertise, use heuristic rules that have been tested in practice and are more reliable. These rules help them make decisions efficiently. Many outstanding leaders compile their own heuristic rules, categorizing them and knowing when to apply which rule in specific situations. For example, the book mentions Rex Tillerson, the former chairman of ExxonMobil, who prioritized honesty in hiring. He believed that if a person lacked integrity, their abilities were irrelevant. In terms of corporate culture, he advocated encouraging risk-taking and granting employees decision-making authority. When evaluating business plans, he considered not only the plan itself but also the credibility of the individuals proposing it. These heuristic rules helped him manage the company more effectively. Even in the data-driven field of financial investment, heuristic rules sometimes outperform complex mathematical models in handling unknown risks. Harry Markowitz, an economist who won the Nobel Prize in Economics, developed a mathematical model called the mean variance portfolio optimization model. It analyzes past stock trends and allocates funds to maximize returns while minimizing risks. Many banks use this model in their financial products. However, when Harry Markowitz retired and started investing himself, he didn't use this model. Instead, he relied on a well-known heuristic rule: diversify investments by spreading them evenly across different stocks. He explained that if a stock went up and he didn't own it, he would regret it. To avoid this regret, he preferred diversification. In a study comparing the performance of his heuristic rule with the mean variance model for 7 different portfolios, the heuristic rule outperformed the model in 6 of them. This doesn't mean the mean variance model is unreliable. Its accuracy depends on the amount of historical stock data available. To use the model effectively, extensive historical data covering hundreds of years would be required, which is not feasible. For individuals seeking stable returns and without the ability to analyze complex financial data, diversifying investments across different assets, such as real estate, bonds, and stocks, is a practical approach. In summary, heuristic rules, derived from experience, are valuable tools for addressing unknown risks and making decisions efficiently. While they may not always lead to significant profits, they can help prevent substantial losses and provide stable returns over the long term. Alright, let's summarize the content of the second part here. There are 3 key points in dealing with risks. 1. The first point is thorough investigation. Understand what risks are involved in a situation and determine their types. 2. The second point is to correctly understand probability. Focus on absolute risk rather than relative risk and use probability to comprehend absolute risk. 3. The third point is when facing unknown risks, simplify the thought process and make decisions based on heuristic rules. Speaking of that, this book is almost done with its introduction. The author believes that risk is an inevitable part of life, and fearing or avoiding it will only lead to more problems and make life worse. We need to learn statistical knowledge and have the courage to think independently. This will help us better understand risks, reduce anxiety, and lead happier lives. Alright, this book is now wrapped up. Congratulations on completing another book. Thank you all for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom and practice to achieve our financial goals and create a better future. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.